And welcome, Hoosier fans, to this week's edition of Assembly Call Radio, brought to you by HoosierProud.com. This is the 22nd episode of Assembly Call Radio, recorded on the evening of Thursday, April 6th, 2017. Well, we're now well into week number 2 of the Archie Miller era at Indiana, and things continue to go well. Colin Hartman is back. Bruiser Flint is on board. No unexpected player transfers have occurred, and we've even gotten to see some highlights from a big man workout that Archie conducted with the likes of Juwan Morgan, Freddie McSwain, Deron Davis, and Thomas Bryant. More on him here in a second. No, things haven't been perfect. John Gross would have made for an excellent assistant coach, but he's taking the head job at Akron, and we still await the final word from 6 players on their potential futures as Hoosiers, 3 potential pros and 3 incoming freshmen. But given the tumult that can arise when a coaching change occurs, Indiana's transition to Archie Miller has been about as smooth as could be hoped for. And for a program that has made coaching transitions much harder on itself than necessary over the past 3 decades, the relative calm of the early days of the Archie Miller era is a welcome and encouraging sign. And we are excited to discuss everything happening in the world of IU basketball with you right here on Assembly Call Radio. I am your host, Jared Morris, here with Ryan Phillips, and a special guest who I will introduce here in a moment, a new regular member of the Assembly Call team. And, of course, you can listen to the Assembly Call IU postgame show live immediately after every IU basketball game at assemblycall.com, and then catch us every Friday night here for Assembly Call Radio. And if you can't listen live, no worries. Just search for Assembly Call wherever you listen to podcasts. iTunes, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, YouTube, SoundCloud, and more. You will find us in all of those places. Well, I will begin this week's show as I begin every postgame show and every episode of Assembly Call Radio, and that is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment. And the banner moment for me this week was Thomas Bryant's presence in the big man workout video. And if you didn't see that video, it was put out. They tweeted it out from the official Indiana basketball Twitter account. Again, it was a workout at Cook Hall. Archie Miller was there. It showed all the big men going through a series of drills, and Thomas was there. And OG was not there, but Thomas was. And it may not mean much, but it does at least mean this. It means that Thomas is still on campus. He's still in school. And he's not so brokenhearted over Tom Crean getting fired that he isn't giving Archie Miller a chance. And, you know, given Thomas Bryant's closeness to Tom Crean and given his status as a potential draft pick next year, it wouldn't have shocked anybody to, see him maybe preparing for the NBA in another way. But the fact that he's on campus, the fact that he's at that workout is at least a good sign. So I still expect, and I think most people expect, Thomas to dip his toes into the NBA waters and at least go through the pre-draft process, especially since he didn't last year. But his presence at the workout suggests that his early entry into the NBA may be less of a foregone conclusion than we once thought. And now let me introduce my esteemed co-host. To my left, sitting in the hallowed chair of one Andy Bottoms, who has the week off, but will be back soon, is the newest member of our Assembly Call team, Zach Mccrite. Zach is an Indiana native, a graduate of IU Southeast, and an 11-year radio veteran, having hosted shows in St. Louis, Oklahoma City, and, of course, back home in Indiana. He also hosts the podcast About Sports Radio. Zach, welcome to the Assembly Call.
Good to be here. I'm privileged that you even asked, so I'm very happy to do it. I've been a listener for quite a while now, so while I am very, very familiar with your all's voices, I'm sure many that are listening aren't familiar with mine, so it's nice to be a part.
No, it's great to have you here. Great to have you here. So we still need a clever name for your opening segment. Obviously, Andy has his Bottoms line. Ryan has his rant. I have the banner moment. But by default, for right now, we'll go with Mccrite's Minute. And if we can think of something better, we will certainly do
that's perfect. I'm sure the people that will listen to the show will come up with something much more creative. But I don't have many creative bones in my body, as big as they already are. But I guess I'll go.
Go.
All the stuff that you said, thank you for the welcome, is all true. I just moved back to Indiana after a 5-year stint away doing sports radio in St. Louis and Oklahoma City. We had a daughter that our first kid, a second one on the way, but she ended up having to have open heart surgery at 4 months old. So that kind of got the wife a little homesick for the first time. So it was back home again in Indiana before we knew it. So, but very happy to be back. Been back for just about a year now, and it's very different watching Indiana games back in Indiana than it was away. There is far more. I don't know. You can just kind of feel it. You kind of feel the buzz more than when you feel it away. So very happy to be here. I know you're going to talk a lot about Thomas Bryant, or we are. So I'll save a lot of that. I'll just let people know that as far as my thoughts on Archie Miller being the new head coach in Indiana, I'm all for it. That I was one of the guys that I'm sure I kind of fit in the mold. Like, what do they call those? They call them Venn diagrams, where you got circles that all overlap each other, right? Where I was probably in the group that, would have loved a Billy Donovan, obviously, would have loved the pie in the sky, and was very much cool with Steve Alford. My next choice after Donovan probably would have been Greg Marshall. That's just me. And then I was also the part of the Venn diagram that stayed out of the Steve Alford camp. So that was me. I know everybody else is kind of, all those circles overlap somewhere for everybody, but that's just a little bit of the background on me, as much as you can get in a quote unquote Mccrite minute. But I'm very happy to be here.
Great to have you. And to my right, we have a man who believes the only thing missing from the national championship game was a few more foul calls, a columnist for thebiglead.com, and someone who remains very interested in the position of shot doctor on Archie Miller's inaugural Indiana staff. He is Ryan Phillips. Ryan, what is your opening rant about the last week in IU basketball?
First of all, just Archie, call me. I'm here for you, buddy. No, I think that sort of like you said, Jared, it just seems like everything's progressing the way it should be right now. There's no emergency of a new coach and a bunch of guys leaving, a bunch of new guys coming. It just seems like it's actually a pretty smooth transition so far. Of course, I know I've just jinxed it, but at this point, it feels like Miller has come in and at least what he said to some of the guys has really resonated, because you're seeing guys commit to staying, going to that workout, as you said. I don't know if that's going to stay that way. We don't know. We'll see how it unfolds. I keep getting questions from people. My dad, mostly, who's an adopted Indiana fan, keeps asking me, like, well, when are we going to know about this? When are we going to know about this? I'm just like, calm down. It's going to take a few weeks for everybody. I mean, he can't even go visit recruits until, I believe it was today, or maybe it's next week. I'm not sure, but I know it's coming up. But he can't even do that yet. So we don't know what's going to happen, and maybe he doesn't vibe with the guys or it doesn't fit in. I mean, there's still, some time left for this all to work itself out. But, it just feels like it's been a smooth transition, and like his attitude is in the right place for Indiana, where he's worried about right now working on the players that are here, building relationships around the state as quickly as he can, but focusing mostly on things internally, and then also connecting with the kids who are already recruited and who already have letters of intent with Indiana, and figuring that out. So, I just feel like we're in a place where everything seems like it's going smoothly, and it seems like he's fitting in and hitting the ground running, as opposed to, dropping like a bomb and having to sort of sort everything out and then move forward and rebuild everything. It seems like he's kind of just plopped in and hit the ground running.
Yep. All right. Well, we have a jam-packed episode of Assembly Call Radio for you, as we always do. We're going to pick back up with a little bit of Thomas Bryant talk the rest of this segment. We're each going to give a key takeaway from Archie Miller's media roundtable that he hosted earlier this week, which was very, very interesting. We're going to do a little bit of early recruiting talk, because there have been a few interesting news and notes that have come out there. And then if we have time, we're going to begin a new series that will carry forward here on Assembly Call Radio, a player breakdown, where each week we'll take a segment and break down a player looking forward to what he needs to especially work on, improve on going into next season. And if we do have time for that segment, we're going to talk about Durham Davis tonight. All of that and possibly even more on this week's edition of Assembly Call Radio. But first, I do want to take a quick second and tell you about our presenting sponsor, HoosierProud.com, because if you consider yourself a Hoosier, and not just an IU Hoosier, but someone who is proud to have roots in the great state of Indiana, then you need to check out HoosierProud.com, where they offer a line of t-shirts and accessories that are unmatched for anyone who wants a unique, stylish way to display their pride in being a Hoosier. And if you're a proud member of the Assembly Call audience, there are also many ways at HoosierProud.com that you can display that Assembly Call pride as well, with our zip-up hoodie, our t-shirt. All of our merchandise, at least the t-shirts and the hoodie, are now there at HoosierProud.com, and we hope that you will take a look, check that out, and whether it's an Assembly Call shirt that you want or one of the other really cool Hoosier Proud shirts that have really neat Indiana themed designs on them, you can use the promo code AC, and you will receive a 15% discount on your entire order. So go to HoosierProud.com, browse their entire selection of items, and use the promo code AC to receive 15% off at HoosierProud.com. This is the Assembly Call. I am Jared Morris here with Zach Mccrite and Ryan Phillips talking about IU basketball here on Assembly Call Radio. And guys, let's talk a little more about Thomas Bryant. Because again, I think the expectation is that he will test the waters. In fact, I think it would just be smart for him to go through that entire process. But, Ryan, when you look at it, Draft Express has him as the 39th pick in this year's draft, so a second rounder. And we've often heard that the big man depth in next year's draft is not what it is like this year. And, Thomas didn't have a great sophomore season, so his stock certainly didn't go up any. Do you think, and we had this question on Twitter, do you think he would benefit from staying another year, playing under Archie Miller, and yes, possibly showing more polish to his game, but also obviously running the risk of both injury and having more of his flaws exposed?
Well, I think it's no secret that his draft stock dropped this year. If you're looking at last year to this year, it would have been smarter for him to go pro last year. But I do agree that I think he should come back, because I think that he has a chance to inflate his draft stock tremendously with a good junior season. I realize a lot of people, their inclination would be, no, go now or it could get worse. I think Thomas is too talented to have another down year. And I think he was dragged down by the team a bit this year. And he was part of that as well. I mean, just not playing disciplined basketball with the rest of the guys. So I think it's absolutely to his benefit to come back. And I'm not just saying that because I'm an Indiana fan. I mean, we have Durham Davis as the next guy who we're going to talk about later. But I think that, quite frankly, in a more coherent offense with more veteran guys around, he's going to have a better chance to showcase himself. And so I would really like to see him come back. I think absolutely you're right. He should do the process. He should go to the combine. He did that last year, get advice. There's no negative to doing that. I think OG Anunoby should do that as well. I
don't think he did it last year. I think he said, I'm staying.
Oh, Bryant didn't. You're right. Yeah, you're right.
James did.
Yeah. And Troy Williams was the other underclassman who did it. But no, I think that there's no downside to doing that, especially the way the NBA is set up now, where you can go in and after the combine decide to return and get the advice. I think there's no downside to that, and he should absolutely do it. So I don't see a problem with declaring and coming back and not hiring an agent, and I believe he should do that.
I mean, Zach, you spent a lot of time in an NBA market covering an NBA team, the Oklahoma City Thunder. What do you think Thomas will do, and what do you think he should do?
Well, by the way, my NBA grading is not very good. I can remember before I even left to go do radio out of market, I watched Brownsburg High School play here in Indiana in the semi-state, which is, the Final Four. And Gordon Hayward was on that team. And this was before Butler had even made a Final Four, and I was like, this kid's going to Butler. This kid's he's not very good. He's going to Butler.
Well, at that point, to be fair to you, at that point he was a tall, skinny tennis player.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that?
He was like 150 pounds, dripping wet. Yeah. But then even so, to go forward, when he was at Butler, I was like, this guy's going to really leave now and go to the NBA. He's crazy. So
I just want to say how refreshing it is for someone to admit that they missed on scouting a player, because Ryan has scouted every player perfectly.
I actually have, though, Jared. I've done pretty good. Let's be honest. One thing I will say about Hayward, though, and you may have been right, he is one of the few examples of a guy who spent most of his rookie year in the D League and wound up being successful. That's my projection for kids. If you're going to spend your rookie year in the D League, you're done. I mean, look at Noah Vonleh. He started some games for Portland this year, but his career has never taken off because when he jumped, he wasn't ready. They were drafting him on potential. And in the NBA, if you aren't impacting a game early, they're going to forget about you.
Troy's kind of in that limbo right now, too. I know we're getting off subject a little bit, but he's kind of in that limbo now,
he's also a guy who went undrafted, though. I mean, so.
That's true. Yeah. That's true. He everything that he gets in the NBA is certainly a positive. But anyway, my point was, while Ryan was speaking, I was trying to look it up as fast as I could, and I only know how to do this with Chad Ford's mock drafts because he does the whole 1.0 and 2.0 and 3.0, and I don't really know how to do that with Draft Express. But has Thomas Bryant's on Draft Express gone down since the season ended? I felt like he was late first round.
He's been all over the place. He's been late first round. I think there was a time when he was even in the 2017 draft or the 2018 draft, and now he's back on the 2017 board. So he's bounced around a little bit.
It's just amazing how much he's fallen to where, I know during the season when I was talking to my friends about Thomas Bryant, I was like, look, man, if he's going to be in the first round, I mean, who are we to say don't go? I mean, you're going to get a guaranteed contract, et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, he's still falling. It feels like he's still falling to where you're certainly, I mean, I think we can say this with certainty. You're certainly not guaranteed a first round spot anymore. That would be that's my only criteria, I guess, for whether I think a player should stay or go. I just want to make sure you're guaranteed a contract, but every situation is different. I thought it was fantastic to see him on the video and to see that he's practicing, et cetera, et cetera. So I think the right move would be to stay. I thought he missed Yogi last year. Or this past season.
We all did.
Yeah, God, so did I.
Yeah, I know, right. So did everyone else in Indiana. My bad. But you know what I'm saying. I mean, the pick and roll. It seemed like all of that stuff grooved with him and Yogi. I thought he missed that this year. Who knows what it'll be next year? I think he'll have to kind of reinvent himself if he does come back, slightly. But all in all, it'll probably be better for him in terms of draft stock. So I hope he comes back, and I think it'd be the smart move given that his family situation and everything there is okay.
Yep. All righty. Well, coming up on the assembly call, we are going to talk about Archie Miller's media roundtable that he hosted this week, give you some key takeaways from that. That is coming up on Assembly Call Radio. Stick with us. Beautiful. All right, that segment was 1746. 1745.
So what do you got, like
Very nice.
50 minutes?
Yeah, we have 50 total minutes, and we just split it up into 4 segments. Our last segment always ends up being pretty short.
Cool.
Because the segments always go longer than we think.
Oh, shit.
Whoa.
We're offline. Sorry.
We're online on the Hangout. We're not. I don't think we're being broadcast live on the radio.
Somebody just said we just launched an attack on Syria.
Seriously?
Really?
Whoa.
Let's see. U.S. launched missile strikes on al-Shariat military airfield near Homs, Syria.
My.
Yep, I'm seeing them now too. I'm seeing the tweets. Yep.
Yay, war!
U.S. warships launched 50 Tomahawk cruise missiles. Whoa.
That's not a small attack. Against a Syrian military installation, those aren't that's not radical targets. Oh, Christ. All right, we shouldn't talk about this on the air.
Lovely. No, we shouldn't. Okay.
Hello, YouTubers.
Yes. All right. Okay, Ryan, did you have a chance to read several of the articles about Archie Miller's media roundtable?
I listened to your thing. I perused some of them. I just don't have time to read that shit right now. Sorry. God.
Hey, careful.
It's YouTube, right?
I know, but hey, habits. We don't want to get into bad habits because sometimes
I always
broadcast live.
When it's game time, I turn it on.
Jared. No, hey, we had this exact same argument about IU this year. You can't just turn it on. Habits. Habits.
I'm flustered. We just bombed people.
Okay, so I can kick this off. Zach, I'll kick it to you to start, and then Ryan, you can pick it up from there. And then we'll just go. If this, if we get into a good conversation here, then we can make the segment a little bit longer and if not, that we can get out after 10, 11 minutes. If that works for you guys.
It's fine.
Cool. Works for me.
So I'm going to I'm going to talk about priorities because I think that was the biggest takeaway from the whole thing. Okay. You guys ready? I'll get the next segment started.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. All right, here we go. You are listening to the Assembly Call presented by HoosierProud.com. I'm Jared Morris here talking IU hoops with Zach Mccrite and Ryan Phillips. And in case you missed it, earlier this week, Archie Miller hosted a roundtable for some of the local media members. Rick Bozich was there, Greg Doyle was there, Greg Gottfried, guys from the Herald Times. I think maybe a few others were there. And as I've said a couple of places, it must have been a really inspiring meeting with Archie Miller because some of the writing that came out of it was really, really good. Some of the best IU basketball writing I feel like we've gotten this entire offseason. So kudos to the guys who were there. And really just, thank you for sharing that perspective, obviously, for those of us who weren't able to be there. And I actually did a 3-point shot article and episode about this. So if you want to go back and listen in the podcast archive or go to assemblycall.com/3-point-shot, you can read the entire article that I wrote about this. But I want to give both of you guys a chance to respond and react to some of what Archie Miller said in there because there was a lot, and I think a lot to react to. And I'll just say that my, kind of macro reaction to it and my reaction to really everything Archie has done since he's been named head coach is that he really seems to have his priorities in order. I think for any coach of a college sports team, your priority is the players on your team. And I've been so impressed with the fact that Archie has welcomed in the current players with open arms. I mean, saying, he inherited them, he didn't recruit them, but they are his guys. And the fact that he really pushed everything else off, including, really going forward, hiring, all of his staff and, going out and doing some recruiting, that kind of stuff. He really pushed all that aside to focus on the current players. And I think you see that in the fact that we haven't had any transfers, and a guy like Thomas Bryant is still sticking around. So that investment that he's made in them really seems to be paying off. And I think that is going to really help Indiana have a much better 2017-18 season than maybe we would have expected otherwise in the first season of a new coach. So I've been really impressed with that, and it really hit home, reading some of the articles about that media roundtable. Zach, what stuck out for you, kind of reading some of the reactions to that?
Really, that was mostly the big thing that stuck out to me. I don't know if I'm in the minority or the majority, honestly, but I kind of, if you would have asked me before Archie Miller came on, I would have thought, if you would have asked me, what do you want Archie to do first? I would have been, go talk to every recruit. Go talk to every Indiana high school coach. Go talk to every, if you're truly inside out, which I love that line, then get out there and talk to those guys. And so reading this kind of made me take a step back. It seemed like he learned some sort of lesson from how he did this at Dayton.
Self-awareness is a beautiful thing, isn't it?
It really is. Which honestly, that might be my takeaway. For him to have the just the self-awareness, the ability to look inside and go, okay, where did I err at the last place that I was at? I need to fix this, and decide I'm going to start with the players that are here. Was almost kind of awe-inspiring. Not that that's the right way to do it or the wrong way to do it. It's just that he did it a different way than he had done it before. So very interesting to me. I love the. I thought both Bozich and Doyle, I thought, wrote great columns, like you said, and I love Doyle kind of keeping an eye on the brown wrapper that goes over the top of the paper coffee cup and what Miller had done with it the entire time they were talking.
That was a great anecdote.
Which is great. That's what makes him a great writer. So that sort of stuff, and I won't spoil it for those who haven't read it, but I've given enough away already. But I really thought it kind of showed the self-introspective nature in which Archie has in him and can be, and maybe that can dwindle on down to this Indiana squad.
And as Brian F. notes in our chat, and by the way, our chat always goes at assemblycall.com/live. What I learned from Archie Miller's Roundtable, buy stock in Mother Bear's Pizza, because apparently he's been ordering Mother Bear's pizzas every night. So I don't think Archie's been eating well. And Archie, we need you to take care of yourself. Eat better. It's got to be more than coffee and pizza. Maybe when his family gets back in town.
I did note that. I'm like,
what is he, a crab fisherman? It's like coffee and Red Bull and whatever 8,000 calorie dinner you can find.
And by the way, people like me, very jealous of people like Archie Miller. That is not very cool what he does, and he flaunts it to all these sports writers. It makes me crazy.
Ryan, what was your takeaway?
I just think that he's a guy who knows what he wants and knows what he wants to do, and he's focused. I mean, this is not a guy coming in and learning on the job. I mean, he has a set protocol that he believes in and that he is gonna, use and not have to change what he's doing because he's moving up a level. He knows what works. He comes from that family. I mean, that family is loaded with coaching knowledge. I mean, they're close friends with Calipari and whatever you think of Calipari, he's a good coach. I mean, a good actual basketball coach. And
we'll edit that out. Don't worry.
Yeah, no, it's fine. But no, he's, technically from a basketball perspective, he is a good coach who gets a lot out of players. And so he's surrounded himself his entire life with people who know what they're doing. And so he has a philosophy and, just something he feels good about, and he's certainly thought this out. This isn't a guy flying by the seat of his pants. He knows what he wanted to come in and do, and he had that set up. And you got to think that for a couple of years, he knew he was looking at moving up, to another job, and he had a plan for what he was going to do when he got there. And a place like Indiana, he had a plan. And I think that a lot of fans feel the same way that Zach does, that the first thing you need to do is recruit, go talk to coaches, all that stuff. But I think it's what he said. It's solidify what's going on with the players, figure out what you've got coming back, especially with so many veterans coming back, lock that in, because that's the power base from which you're going to build. And you may not get a good recruiting class next year because these guys have been recruited for 2 or 3 years by the guys you're going up against. So lock in that team. The best way to get recruits and to get coaches to pay attention to you is to win. If you win, the kids will come. You'll see some losing programs score great talent every once in a while, but the best way to get kids consistently is to win consistently and to produce consistently. And he knows the way to do that is with the guys he's already got, and to form them into a cohesive unit, get them on the same page, and then move forward from there. And I think we'll see him over the next couple of weeks really start to reach out to the Indiana coaches, the AAU coaches. I mean, I would assume he's already doing that behind the scenes, but I think we'll see him, visible presence in some of those places, because I think he knows how important that is. And every AAU, I was texting with people during this coaching search, and every AAU and high school coach I talked to, assistants, head guys, whatever, they all told me they love Archie Miller and thought he would be a great fit if Indiana went that route. Indiana wound up going that route, and these people all like him. So I think the fact that he has a dad who was a high school coach probably helps. He can relate to those people and their lives and what they deal with. So I think it's perfect what he's doing, and then I think over the next few weeks you will see him start to branch out. But the thing that stood out to me from each of those articles that came out was how confident he is in what he's doing, and how he already had a plan for this. This was long, and this wasn't something he came up with in the few days after he took the job. He had this ready, and he knew what he wanted to do.
You're listening to the Assembly Call presented by HoosierProud.com. I'm Jared Morris here with Ryan Phillips and Zach Mccrite. I'll tell you 2 other things real quick that stood out. Number one, the complete lack of excuses. Like, he's not laying the groundwork for struggles in 2017-18. He wants to win now, and he will be shocked and disappointed if Indiana doesn't win and play well and be very competitive as soon as next season. And I liked seeing that. The other thing, and I want to get both your guys' reaction to this, is he pretty much stated it, at least it was stated as near certainty, that there will be a home-and-home series with Arizona against his brother Sean, which I think is awesome. I mean, we've all been wanting better games in the non-conference.
Should that really shock us, Jared?
No, it shouldn't. But look, there's some, would everybody want to do that? Because obviously, sometimes you might not, against your brother, you may not want to take the risk of putting a loss on each other's record. And so I'm not sure that everybody would do that, but I love that competitive fire. And obviously, if he can get the Kentucky series going again, that would just be
that was the other thing. That was the other thing, Jared, that I noted, is that he said that the Kentucky series, they asked him about the Kentucky series, and he was like, that's That's kind of, I don't know. I can't say verbatim. I can't remember what he said.
I think he said that's bigger than me.
Bigger than
it's
me.
above his pay grade,
But that's what I was thinking, Ryan, that it was above his pay grade. And so it's very interesting how that goes. You know, you can only do so much, but even if you're the head coach at IU, you still can't have the final say, at least seemingly, in starting up the IU UK series. I know that bugs some people, but my friends will attest. I don't know who else would, but my friends that I text back and forth with on IU basketball all the time will attest that my biggest gripe of all the gripes, and I know there are a lot with Tom Crean, there are a lot of great things too, but of all the gripes, the non-conference schedule was number one in my book. And I could not stand it year in and year out. And I know this year we're, North Carolina, Kansas, I get it. But enough, just please, if anything, Archie Miller, this year, enough with the plus 300 RPI teams. I'll take 200. I mean, give me 205. That's fine. But
his history suggests that he will schedule much better.
And to be fair, that also falls on Fred Glass's head as well.
Absolutely,
I mean,
absolutely.
He, in a lot of ways, he is the influential guy in scheduling. It's his, a lot of these are done with relationships with other athletic directors, and Fred doesn't have a deep Rolodex. He's got to figure that out now. I mean, and I think it'll be great that Archie's definitely going to push for that, I think. And so if you're getting pushed, then you'll work on it. But, that's why we saw a lot of the same teams in every year during Crean's tenure, because he had relationships with those people and could get them on the schedule and get them to come to Assembly Hall.
Yep. Any other final thoughts on what you read from Archie in this roundtable? Anything else that we've seen this week before we move on and start talking about some players?
The other thing that I would say, Jared, is that the comparison, excuses, that's one of the things that I know he was big on in talking to his players about, or talking about his players in the press conference. The opening press conference was no excuses from the players. And it's very nice. You don't always see that trickle down to the coach saying that I'm accountable too. You don't always see that. And I feel like there might have been a little bit of that with Tom Crean too. And I don't mean to throw him under the bus the very first time I'm here. I was fine with Crean, but it seemed like, well, I need a little bit of time. But these guys, I need them today, but I need a little bบof time. You don't get that with Archie, at least not so far.
No. And I mean, look, we've said many great things about Tom Crean on the show, supported him for, the majority of the 6 years that we did this show. But I think we all got a little worn down this year by what felt like an endless supply of excuses. And, so hopefully, and again, look, this is all, Archie Miller's been on the job for 2 weeks. What really matters is obviously when the season starts and the wins start coming and the losses start coming and how you deal with it. But we can only judge based on what we see. And I think we all agree. So far, so good. All right, coming up on the Assembly Call, some interesting recruiting news did come out the last couple of days, and so we want to talk on that. And also look ahead to the sophomore season for Deron Davis. That's next on the Assembly Call. Stay with us. All right, that was 12:46. Well done, gentlemen.
LeVar Ball blames UCLA's Sweet 16 loss to Kentucky.
No, I'm just kidding.
Blames UCLA's Sweet 16 loss to Kentucky on the slow white guys on the team.
Why are we talking about things that he says?
His kid's son was guarding a guy who scored 39 points. By the way, I just thought
this is why listening to anything the man says is a waste.
Unfortunately, Jared, my job is
no. I don't blame you and the people publishing it as much as the people who clearly yearn for it and create the demand for it. We all have a responsibility. Stop clicking on LeVar Ball links unless it's Ryan's link, and then support Ryan. But everybody else, don't. We always support you, Ryan.
Appreciate it.
All right. So for this segment, I want to just real quick mention a few of the news bits. That now Archie is starting to get out and talk with recruits. Like he had a conversation with Romeo Langford. He was texting with Robert Finnessy. So some of the real big recruits coming up. I think that's interesting. And then let's jump in and talk about Deron, and then we'll just kind of leave a short last segment. We're at
what's crazy?
30 minutes and 31 seconds.
Isn't Deron actually older than Thomas Bryant?
Is he really?
I think he is.
Is that true?
Yeah, because Bryant was like 17 when he came to campus.
Ooh, we might have some breaking news here. A guard video was just posted by Indiana basketball. Very nice.
Let's see what we got there.
Let's see.
Oh, yeah, there it is. There's Curtis Jones dribbling.
Good.
Okay, we got dribbling. Devontae Green is there. Hey, Blackman's there.
Yeah.
Okay, so clearly you
everybody.
can. Okay, so clearly you can say you're going to go to the draft and still be at these workouts and videos. So maybe.
Oh, you know what? I can say something about that too, and I meant to say about Thomas Bryant. If you want to roll back around on it, and I'll make sure to write it down about practicing when you might be testing the waters.
Okay, so Thomas Bryant was born July 31st, 1997. Deron Davis was born November 20th, 1996.
Are you serious?
Wow.
Jeez. All right, so let's open up with that note.
He is 20 and Brian is still 19.
Wow.
I mean, that happens these days, though. They're only one class apart, you know.
That's true.
So, it just seems like Brian's been around forever.
Yeah, it does.
You know.
It does. And what's crazy about that is we weren't even recruiting Thomas Bryant that long. Like, it's not like it was like sometimes guys that you recruit for a long time, it feels like they've been on the team longer, and his was such a quick recruitment.
Yeah.
Okay, so how do we want to structure this? Do we want to go interesting Thomas Bryant factoid and then hop into Deron Davis?
Well, yeah, let's
we can end with that recruiting stuff in the last segment, so we can spend more time talking Thomas and Deron. I think that's more interesting.
Yeah, and don't even start with the factoid. Just go talk about Deron Davis, and I can mention that off the top is that he's a big old boy.
Okay.
Or you can just even say that's an interesting Deron Davis fact is that he's older than Thomas Bryant, I think.
It is an interesting Deron Davis fact. Okay. All right, you ready? I will get this segment started. So we're at 30-31. So we'll, this one can go 13, 14 minutes and we'll be fine. All right, you guys ready?
Yep.
Okay, I'm starting it. You're listening to the Assembly Call presented by HoosierProud.com, where they offer a line of T-shirts and accessories that are unmatched for anyone who wants a unique, stylish way to display their pride in being a Hoosier. Go to HoosierProud.com and use the promo code AC for 15% off. I'm Jared Morris, talking IU basketball with my co-hosts on the Assembly Call IU postgame show, Zach Mccrite and Ryan Phillips. And you can, of course, join us after every IU basketball game over at assemblycall.com and every Friday right here for Assembly Call Radio. So we're going to save a few of the interesting recruiting nuggets from earlier this week for our last segment. Just while we were recording this, a new video dropped from the Indiana basketball Twitter account. It's a guard video. I just watched it real quick. Curtis Jones, pretty much everybody that you would expect to be there is there. Curtis Jones, Devontae Green, Robert Johnson, James Blackman Jr. And clearly James Blackman Jr. has already said he's going to test the NBA draft waters, but not hire an agent. So the fact that he's there, still working out on campus, again, I take that as a good sign. That he, like all the other players, is really receptive to Archie Miller, giving him a chance. He hasn't, gone elsewhere to work out with his own trainers. That's a good thing. Maybe dampens the excitement just a tad of seeing Thomas Bryant there at the earlier video, but I still think it's a good sign that both of those guys are on campus working out. I really like that. So, speaking of Thomas Bryant, let's segue into talking about Deron Davis in this segment, because we're going to start going player by player and really looking ahead to what these guys need to do to take the next step as players. And before we get into Deron, actually, Ryan, you've got an interesting little factoid that I think may blow some people's minds that you looked up in the break. Do you want to reveal that now?
Well, what's interesting is that Deron Davis is actually older than Thomas Bryant by about a year. Thomas's birthday is in July of 1997, and Deron's is in November of 1996. So he's actually a year older than Thomas Bryant, which, we were talking about this in the break as well. Is it's not that odd because these guys are back-to-back classes, but it's just interesting to think that he is far more physically developed. And we talked about this a lot, is that when he stepped on campus, he was far more physically developed than Thomas Bryant was, and there's a reason for that. He's older and he's bigger. He's got more muscle mass and things like that. So I think that's interesting. He's a 20-year-old kid. He's ready to take the next step. By the time that the season gets going next year, he's going to be 21. So as a sophomore. So that's a guy who is physically up to par as they move on to the next, move into the next season.
Zach, you had a note on Thomas Bryant, I think, right?
I was just going to say, and this kind of goes more towards the recruiting, or not the recruiting stuff, I'm sorry, but the watching of these videos and stuff, and these guys testing the waters and things of that nature. If and you guys tell me if you think I'm wrong here, but if we see these guys, seemingly everyone, including those who are going to quote unquote test the waters, practicing on campus, that to me seems like that they're probably not even none of them are going to hire an agent. Because if I were, and follow me down this road, if I were to hire an agent, or if even I thought about hiring an agent, wouldn't I go ahead and get it done and get me insured, et cetera, get all these things in line to where I can go ahead and start working out with said agency or the people that are connected with said agency, and not necessarily with my college team. To me, that screams maybe, and I could be blown away out of proportion, conspiracy theory, whatever, but it seems like that would tell me that all the guys that we expect to test the waters are going to do so without an agent.
That's what I think too. I mean, James said that, Thomas hasn't announced, and I think the expectation for a while has been that OG will not just test the waters, but enter the draft and pretty much be ready to go.
And I guess
he's a top 15 pick, so that makes sense.
I guess it only means Thomas Bryant is the only one that I'm really thinking of, I guess, because I say all three, but OG, we know, coming back from an injury, he's probably going to sign. And James Blackman had already said what he was going to say, or he's not going to be with an agent, whatever. So I guess it's really just Thomas Bryant. But I would figure with Thomas, if you're going to sign with an agent, you stay off the floor. At least that's what I would think, at least.
Yeah, or go to one of those private academies or something and do it. Not a coach that you've never worked with. So, yeah, so a good sign. So let's jump in and let's talk about Durham, and let's look ahead to his progression from freshman to sophomore, because I think when you just look at his numbers, there's a few things that really jump out. I think number one, it's interesting that he used more possessions last year on a percentage basis than anyone on Indiana's roster. He used 24% of possessions. Now, he didn't play a ton of minutes, as we know. He only played 34% of the available minutes. But when he was on the floor, Indiana, typically made a concerted effort to get him the ball, and he was a focal point of the offense. It's going to be interesting to see how that evolves under Archie Miller, who has never really had a big, down on the block postman back to the basket like Deron Davis. So what does Archie Miller have in his bag of tricks in his offensive arsenal to utilize a guy like Deron? I think the other two things that you look at, number one, the free throw rate and free throw percentage. Deron had a free throw rate of 66%, which is outstanding. So, and he also made his free throws. He shot 75.6%. We know, Archie Miller teams, they get to the line a lot. I don't know that you can get to the line a whole lot more at a much greater clip than what Deron did, but certainly him continuing that would be huge. The one concern is his 2-point field goal percentage was not great. It was only 48.5%. You'll remember Thomas Bryant, as a freshman, was up over 70%. And I thought at times, Deron, even though he got good position, kind of carried the ball low, has a low release on his shot, isn't, a great athlete. So it's not like he gets a lot of lift jumping. He really has to score with positioning. And he's going to have to do an even better job of that to increase that 2-point field goal percentage. Because if he can, and if he gets that up into the mid-50s or higher, he is going to be a tremendously dangerous weapon. I mean, he already is, but that would kind of take him to the next level. So, Ryan, when I look at Deron and some of the things that need to continue from what we saw as a freshman and then what needs to improve, and obviously we can spend some time talking defense too, but I think for him to continue being an offensive focal point, he's got to be more efficient on the block, with those 2-point field goal attempts. And I think if he can do that, he can really take the next step.
Yeah, I think that's everything you said was right. I agree with, which is weird. I rarely say that. But no, he went from being a Colorado prep star to playing in the Big Ten. There was going to be a transition period. Colorado is actually an up and coming state for basketball talent, but it's not, Indiana. So the guys he was playing every single night were nowhere near the same level as he was going to face in the Big Ten. And, he plays like a big guy. Like, he's not a guy who steps out on the floor very much. And so he's going to body up against some really big dudes in the post. And so that, I think, really affected him. Not that he wasn't strong. We talked about this on the show. He just seemed very solid when he would get position. He didn't get bumped around, none of that. but it still affects you when you're going up and shooting against a bigger guy. So I think that this offseason, remember, he didn't have the offseason program either. He came in very late to campus. I think that this is going to be a really key offseason for him to create two things. One, get used to banging against taller guys in the post and get used to finishing around the rim when you're getting harassed and you're not 4 inches taller than the guy who's guarding you. And then I think secondly, he needs to work on his foot speed. He needs to work on his lateral quickness for defensive purposes. He has a great basketball mind. He gets himself into great position defensively, and that leads to blocks and steals and some of those things in the post. But what he doesn't do is move laterally well, and especially if you're going to have him out there isolated in pick and rolls and things like that, he's got to be quicker. A, to stop the driver, and B, to recover to his man. So I think those are the two focal points for him, is just getting used to going up against size and getting himself stronger while also working on foot speed and quickness. I think those are the two main things he's got to work on this offseason. I love this kid. I've been pumping him up for well over a year.
You were there when he was born, in fact, I think.
I was in the delivery room, and it's, you just knew from the start, you knew. But no, I've been a huge fan of his ever, since we were recruiting him, and thought that he was going to wind up being a great player for Indiana. I still feel that way. Nothing has changed after his freshman year. He's just got a few things to work out, and he's got to be able to handle the minutes, because there's a chance Thomas Bryant isn't back and he's the starter.
Yep. You're listening to the Assembly Call. I'm Jared Morris here with Zach Mccrite and Ryan Phillips, breaking down Duran Davis. And, I'll tell you one other thing that really jumps out, when you look at the stats, is Duran, he's got a big, wide base. We know he's got the potential to be a good rebounder, and he was a very good offensive rebounder last year. In fact, only, I believe, Freddie McSwain had a better offensive rebounding percentage than Duran, but Duran was not a good defensive rebounder. His defensive rebounding percentage was 12.3%. If you don't kind of keep up with advanced stats, that is not a good number for a guy of his size. In fact, Robert Johnson, Thomas Bryant, James Blackman Jr., OG Anunoby, Freddie McSwain, Jawan Morgan all had defensive rebounding percentages higher than Duran Davis. In fact, much higher. And so that to me is, again, another area where he'll need to get better. And part of that is that lateral quickness. Part of it is awareness and positioning. And because he got out of position a lot on defense last year, and obviously teams tried to put him in pick and roll situations that were tough for him. But he's also going to have to be a better defensive rebounder coming into next year too. Zach, when you look at Duran Davis, what do you think are the biggest other additional steps for him as he looks to grow from his freshman to his sophomore year?
Well, you mentioned a couple stats one after another, and if you put them together, it's awful odd to me. You mentioned the free throw rate, which is just huge. I mean, 66.2 is what was the biggest number on the team. So he was going, which basically means, I guess the more times you touch the ball, the more times you went to the free throw line, et cetera, et cetera. So for him to have that number as a free throw rate, the biggest on the team, and yet still not be able to finish underneath the basket, and on top of that be used in as many possessions as he did, is mind-boggling. Where I think all of us, I know Ryan felt this way. I mean, I listened to you guys for sure, and we were like, give the ball to him, for crying out loud, post him up and give him the ball. Whereas now, if I just take a quick look at the numbers, if I'm an opposing coach, just don't foul him. Just don't foul him, and you might be okay. But he was able to draw a lot of fouls when he got the ball, and I think that's what made Indiana fans kind of have the warm and fuzzies about him, even if he didn't finish every single time around the rim. So I think that's obviously key. You got to finish around the rim. I'm not going to be able to come up with anything much more new than what you guys say. Be able to finish around the rim, but like you guys said, you have to be able to rebound the ball better than that. You have to. I mean, Bam Adebayo of Kentucky is a guy who is probably going to be a first rounder. I mean, don't get me wrong, but I can remember reading not too long ago that one of the reasons he's kind of dipped is because look at this huge body that he's got, and he can't even get himself a double-double. at Kentucky with all the minutes he's playing because he won't rebound the ball. He might get 7 or 8, but for his size, he needs to have more than that. The same goes for Deron Davis. Deron Davis has got to be a guy that, especially if Thomas Bryant is gone next year, he has to be the double-double guy. And it almost has to be like that every single game if we want to see an Indiana team that's going to, maybe inch up on 20 wins or more.
And I'll tell you the other thing. So you guys remember how much Freddie McSwain fouled people last year, right? I mean, he was committing a lot of fouls. He actually committed 6.5 fouls per 40 minutes. Deron Davis's fouls committed per 40 minutes was actually worse. Deron committed 7 fouls per 40 minutes.
Wow.
Now, he drew 6, which is amazing, and that was the best on the team. But 7 fouls committed per 40 minutes, by far the most on the team. And in addition to his conditioning issues, that's what kept him off the floor. And so, again, he's going to have to learn to play defense with better positioning. And I think just another year of experience will help him do that because he is, I think, a pretty instinctive defender. I just think Indiana as a team is out of position so much last year and was so kind of clueless with what they were doing. Deron got caught up in that a lot. And so he needs to grow on that end of the floor as well, just so that he can stay on the court, because there were a few games where he got in foul trouble within the first couple minutes and then picked up another one, and he could just never get on the court. So that's the other thing for him. Stay on the court, obviously improve, with your footwork down low and with his ability to get the ball up on the rim, improve as a rebounder. And I think he's got a real opportunity to make a big leap from his freshman to his sophomore season. And if he can do that, that obviously bodes well for Indiana in 2017-18. Any final thoughts, you guys, on Duran?
Did you guys like Duran and Thomas Bryant in the game together?
At times. It worked at times in the right matchup, but against a smart offensive team, they could really make Indiana pay on the defensive end.
Yeah, I felt like it hurt big time defensively, but then I come back and go, what lineup didn't hurt?
I mean, there were a couple possessions where they, played a little two-man game on the same side of the court, and it was beautiful, because the defender had to respect Thomas's three-point shooting, and Thomas actually is not a bad post passer.
I love Thomas as a 4. It's just that on the offensive end, it's just that on the defensive end, I mean, and I guess that's probably the main reason that there's a new coach in Indiana. But the defensive end would have to change in that regard. That is, if Thomas comes back. But that's the only.
Well, I think that's part of the reason why Duran needs to work on his lateral quickness. I think. I mean, Thomas too, if he's coming back. I mean, they both. That's a process. That's it's just an agility thing that they've got to work on, because it's really hard to guard on the perimeter if you don't have that.
Yep. All righty. Well, coming up in our final segment here on Assembly Call Radio, we're going to look back at a couple interesting recruiting notes and any other final thoughts that you guys have here on Assembly Call Radio. Stick with us. All right. That was 15:36. So we have a very short final segment coming up.
Can you guys handle it without me?
I think so.
Yeah, because I got to get to work.
Yeah,
with the LeVar Ball thing.
LeVar Ball.
I know, man. Ruining lives. Man.
Has Tim Tebow hit another home run?
Not yet. Thank God.
No. Tebow's hitting home runs. We're going to war, but LeVar Ball is the thing that gets you
number one. Yeah, number one. Jesus.
Yep. That's going to be the title of this episode. LeVar Ball infiltrates the Assembly Call again.
All right, guys.
Now go, man.
I'm out of here. Later.
Yep. See you, man. All right, Zach. So we have 4 minutes. No, we have 3 minutes and 53 seconds.
Oh, wow.
And I've got to start the intro. It's a 36-second outro. So I've got, give me some quick math here.
Right at 3 minutes then.
Wait, what did I say? I said we've got 3:53.
So 3:17.
Yeah, 3:17. All right, so I will start it at 3:17. So I will.
Let me
just bring up the. I'm just going to bring up the quick
note. Give me a
note.
signal whenever you tell me. Give me like 15 seconds, or something like that.
I will. I'll put it in the Hangout chat. Can you see the Google Hangout chat?
I saw what you hit. How do I pull that over here? It's been a while.
Either way, it's just the two of us, so I'll just signal.
I got it.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, so I'll signal in there. I'm gonna just open with the note that he's talked to Romeo. He's texting with Robert Finney. So any thoughts that you have there, and then we can just we can ad lib for the final couple of minutes.
Cool.
Talk about stuff. All right. So, all right, you ready?
Yep.
Okay. You're listening to the Assembly Call presented by HoosierProud.com. I am Jared Morris talking IU basketball here with Zach Mccrite. Ryan Phillips needed to leave a little bit early. LeVar Ball struck again. That darn LeVar Ball. We're closing up here on the Assembly Call. And just a couple of interesting notes, that I found. Obviously, we talked about how Archie Miller has really been focusing, truly inside out. I mean, focusing on the guys inside the program right now before he goes out and starts recruiting. And obviously this weekend he's going to meet with Indiana's, incoming freshmen, at least the guys who have signed letters of intent, Justin Smith, Clifton Moore, and Al Durham, and hopefully see, which of those guys, hopefully all of them decide to come next year. But we also got word that Archie, had his first conversation with Romeo Langford, has been texting back and forth a little bit with Robert Finnessy, a point guard from McCutcheon, who is a big priority of Tom Crean's staff. So we're starting to see Archie Miller get out there and start to do some of the inside-out recruiting and start to make those connections in Indiana. And Zach, obviously you're down there in Romeo Langford country, and when everybody saw that note, everybody's just any tweet or news that involves Indiana and Romeo Langford in the same sentence is immediately going to draw the attention of Indiana fans. So I suppose it's at least a positive sign that those lines of communication are open now, as the biggest recruit in Indiana in a long time looks to make his decision in the next year.
For sure. From where I sit currently, I can probably throw a rock at the high school that Romeo plays in, and he kind of changed. I'll be honest with you. I mean, I'm not around a lot of the other big high school recruits that come out of Indiana very often. Obviously, when I'm down in the very southern part of the state, right across the river from Louisville, Kentucky, but since class basketball and high school sports in Indiana began, which was 20 years ago now, I haven't seen buzz about high school forget Romeo. I mean, Romeo was obviously the biggest part of it, but just high school basketball in general, since the move to class basketball and away from one class right now. And the biggest reason is Romeo. And I hate to be the guy. I mean, I'm not the one who wants to just pump him up and just make him holier than thou, but he does have just an aesthetically pleasing game. I will say, if you want to knock on him for anything, his defense will have to be something that would have to be worked with. But I'm sure Archie would.
We'll gladly work with him on his defense.
Come on in, we'll figure something out.
Yeah.
No, great kid, super nice kid too. I mean, just everything you want in a player. And I tell you what, if Archie somehow nabbed him, he would have all kinds of cushion, if you will.
Yeah, there's no question about it. So it'll be interesting. Obviously, Duke's been talked about, Louisville's been talked about, but it's still early in that recruitment, and so we will see what Romeo ends up deciding to do. But that'll do it for us on this week's episode of the Assembly Call. Make sure you join us at assemblycall.com every Thursday night for a live simulcast of our Assembly Call radio recording, or you can subscribe to our podcast by searching for Assembly Call wherever you listen to podcasts. Our thanks to Hoosier Proud for sponsoring this episode. Go to HoosierProud.com and use the promo code AC for 15% off. And thank you for listening. We'll be back to talk IU hoops again with you next week. Until then, keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim, and go Hoosiers. All right. Beautiful.
Sorry if I went too long there. Sorry about that.
That was perfect. That was perfect. It's the final segments when it gets kind of short. That's
and the hard out and all that stuff. Yeah, for sure.
Great. All right, looks like Al Durham is staying at IU.
Really?
Okay, so that's awesome. Very cool. Brian Tonsony just posted this in our chat, and apparently it's hitting Twitter. So that's good.
There, yeah.
So the Assembly Call radio is already outdated, and we just ended it.
I mean, if you want to do that last segment again, I mean, fire away.
Dude, that's not a bad idea. Yeah, let's record the last segment again.
Sure.
That's a great idea, actually. All right, let's do it again. The notes about Romeo were good though, so let's try and get those in again.
Oh, that's all right. Yeah. Whatever. Yeah, you do the Durham stuff, and I can throw in a quick Romeo nugget at the end. That's fine.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. Okay. That's a beautiful part of this. Okay, I'm gonna start it right now. We're still live on YouTube. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So thanks for being here. We're gonna record that last segment again as news broke. Okay. Ready? I'm starting it. You're listening to the Assembly Call presented by HoosierProud.com. I'm Jared Morris here talking IU basketball with Zach Mccrite. Ryan Phillips needed to leave a little bit early. We are wrapping up on this episode of Assembly Call Radio. And news broke, obviously, Thursday night that Al Durham is going to honor his letter of intent and stick with Indiana. I thought all along that of the three incoming freshmen, between Al Durham, Clifton Moore, and Justin Smith, I always thought Al was the most likely to stay just because, he's kind of the lower rated of the three. I didn't think he would have options like Justin Smith and Clifton Moore would have. And there's obviously a long-time relationship there between Indiana and Al Durham. So he is going to stay. And, that's really now the next step for Archie Miller. He's done a really good job of focusing inside out, focusing on the guys inside the program. Now he'll be talking with Justin Smith and with Clifton Moore about what their futures will be and getting out on the recruiting trail. And we got word this week that, Archie was texting back and forth with Robert Finnessy, a point guard out of McCutcheon, who's been a priority for Indiana for a while, and also Romeo Langford. And anytime there's a tweet or a news story that mentions Indiana and Romeo Langford in the same sentence, Indiana fans' ears perk up because he's as big a recruit as we've had in the state in a long time. And Zach, you live down there in Romeo Langford country. What kind of sense do you get about what's going on there?
Well, obviously, just around here, the buzz is just bigger in Indiana high school basketball than it's been since Indiana high school basketball moved to the class system 20 years ago. And I think a lot of that has to do with Romeo. It's not just how well he plays and how aesthetically pleasing his play is, but he's just a great kid on top of it. Just super, super great. And a guy that Indiana fans and really fans of any school would immediately fall in love with, not just on the basketball court, but off. So I think altogether, it's nice to see. It's a good problem to have that it looks like so far Archie Miller has got a huge roster crunch to have to deal with. He's getting played. No one said no yet. And if that can continue all the way to Romeo Langford, I'm sure Archie Miller will get all the cushion he wants.
Yeah, and these are guys who said yes to Tom Crean, where you might think like, hey, maybe there's a loyalty there, a commitment to Crean. Are they going to be open to this new guy? I mean, I think that does say something about his ability to recruit and sell his ideas, which, again, is a good sign for the future.
You'd figure some turnover, and maybe there still will be, but so far so good.
Well, and if there's not, he's going to end up having an even bigger – well, actually, it's not as big a problem. It's a problem that I think will make him uncomfortable because he's never been an oversigned guy. But we could end up having that crunch. If Thomas and James decide to come back, if Justin Smith and Clifton Moore decide to come, there may be 14, 15 scholarships for 13 spots. And that's
Archie will have to start creating the turnover instead of the other way around.
Yeah, well, he will, and we'll see. And again, I don't think that's something that he ever really wanted to do at Dayton. He's a guy who at times, only gave out 12 scholarships. And so we will see. Obviously, that would be a good problem to have, one that I don't think we'll see happen as much in the future, but we'll keep our eye on it and analyze it when it happens. But that'll do it for us on this week's episode of the Assembly Call. Make sure you join us at assemblycall.com every Thursday night for a live simulcast of our Assembly Call radio recording, or you can subscribe to our podcast by searching for Assembly Call wherever you listen to podcasts. Our thanks to Hoosier Proud for sponsoring this episode. Go to HoosierProud.com and use the promo code AC for 15% off. And thank you for listening. We'll be back to talk IU hoops again with you next week. Until then, keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim, and go Hoosiers. Beautiful.
There you go.
353.
Not outdated no more.
There we go. That's a great idea to re-record it. I didn't even think about that.
There you go. Yep.
That's awesome.
That's the beauty of taping. For sure.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. So how'd that feel? Your first Assembly Call?
Good. The more important question is how'd it feel for you all? It always feels okay to me. Well, I shouldn't say that. Sometimes it doesn't, but no, it felt good to me for sure.
Good. No, I'm excited to start working you in the rotation, and
it'll be fun, and it'll get better as we go. For sure.
And how one of the things that we'll want to work out too, and remember we're still live here on the Google Hangout. But one thing I do want to work out is having someone else who knows all the hosting stuff. So, if I'm out or I can't be here,
Sure,
that
sure.
kind of knows that. And Andy does
Sure.
know that. He knows Spreaker pretty well. But eventually, I'll kind of show you. And you've been
Yeah,
around this stuff a
Spreaker,
lot longer than I have. So I'm sure it's pretty simple.
I mean, I can do. I'm sure if you just show me, or I could probably figure it out myself. Spreaker's probably the one app of all the ones that you use that I really don't have a whole lot of history with. But
yeah, it's that, and then just how Skype and Hangouts and everything work together.
Right. How they
the post game show is a lot easier because it's just Hangout. We don't do the other stuff. It's just a Google Hangout.
Right. Yeah, no,
we'll go over that later in the off season.
Sure. Yeah, no, it sounds good. I had a blast. Appreciate you asking, man.
Cool, man. Sure. Yeah, no, it's awesome. It's good to get some new perspectives, and I think that'll help as we move forward in the off season and the news is a little bit more sparse, just to get some different perspectives, different chemistries on here. So,
for sure, and it gives everybody a break too.
Yeah,
let me know for sure.
Okay,
let me know when you want me on again.
Awesome, man. Hey, how's your daughter?
She's great. She's great. We went to the heart doctor a couple months back, and every time we go, the time in between, they tell us to go back a little bit further out and further out. So this time they're like, come back in a year. We're like, yes.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. So yeah, we're good, through the roof, and she's got a nice little zipper down her chest, and it's awesome. Love it.
Love it. Awesome.
So
what a story she's gonna have.
Yeah, no kidding. And I'm glad she'll never remember it. That's the little blessing. You never want to see your daughter have open heart surgery ever, but if you're gonna have it, doing it before they'll have a memory of it, I think will help. Yeah. Or at least it won't hurt.
Yeah. So. Wow. That's awesome, man.
Yep. All is good. And number 2 on the way in July. So
very nice.
Then stuff's gonna get real crazy around here.
Yeah, it is. I know. We may be having a second in, I don't know. We haven't exactly figured out when it'll be, but we're planning on it. So that's gonna.
We're right at 2. They're right at 2 years apart. In fact, they might have the same. They might have the same birthday.
Wow.
I mean, the first one's July 8th, and the due date on number 2 is July 12th. But they're like, we'll probably take this one earlier because your second one, the first one was big. It was like a 9-pound baby. Like your second one, if it's 9 pounds before July 12th, we're taking.
Yeah.
Like,
wow.
All right, let's do it.
All right. Well, if we both have 2 young babies, we're really going to need to lean on each other for help during the basketball season.
I hear you.
And maybe a lot of Andy and Ryan at that point doing the show.
For sure. That said, let's go to bed.
Yes. Yep.
No, good talking to you, man. I enjoyed a lot.
Cool. No, it's awesome to have you on here.
And hello, YouTubers.
Yes. Yeah, we still have 55 people hanging around watching right now.
Follow me at Big Easy if you haven't already. BIGEZ.
Right. BIGEZ.
Yep. I just got one here. Enjoyed seeing and hearing a friend from the 812. Hello, Chris Nally.
All right.
Good to see you.
Hey, and by the way, if you ever want to write on the blog too, if you have some thoughts and want to put them on the blog and even record, some mini episodes, because we've been getting really good response to some of those mini episodes, kind of like reading an article and then just doing commentary as I go. Let me know.
Yeah, you do a good job of putting one piece of content on a ton of platforms, and you do it with the written word now too, which is awesome. It's really good.
I mean, I used to be more of the mind to try and do more pieces of content, but I really like putting more time into one piece, making sure it's well thought out, and then broadcasting that in different places as opposed to a whole bunch of just more sparsely thought out pieces.
I don't know how I don't know if I'm the authority on this or not, because I'm sure other people will disagree with this in our line of work. But if you can get one piece out to as many people as possible, I think that's better than doing a different piece, like you said, more sparse in thought on, one platform here, then another one here, and then another one here, all different thoughts. Everybody likes to, everybody likes to take in their content in different ways. So why not just give it to them in every way possible? And even if it's the same, who cares? Do you follow Gary Vaynerchuk at all?
Of course. Yeah.
He everything, and then he just has people go and post it to his blog in written word form and stuff. I mean, which is basically the opposite of what you do. Why not just do that? I mean, just put the same content everywhere and let people consume it the way they want to consume it.
No, I think
you're doing it the right way.
I agree. Well, let me know, because if you want to write anything or do anything like that, I think Andy's going to start doing one a week, and so
we'll do. Sounds
let me know. Good. All right, man. Well, thank you for joining us tonight. Yeah, talk to you soon.
You got it, buddy. See ya.
And we'll see you all next week or the next time we post a 3-point shot here on YouTube. Take care, everybody.